In the quiet countryside of northwest Malta lies a place that holds the key to one of Europe's greatest prehistoric mysteries. Today, we journey to Skorba, a site where humble farming families lived, where they ground their grain, raised their animals, and, centuries later, built the first stones of Malta's monumental temple tradition. For some, Malta's temples seem too sudden, too advanced to have been made by farming villagers. Fringe theories speak of lost civilizations, forgotten technologies, or sudden leaps in knowledge. But the story written in the soil at Skorba, through radiocarbon dates, pottery shards, seeds, bones, and stone, tells us something different. Here, archaeology reveals not mystery but continuity, a long, steady buildup from settlement to shrine to temple. If you like this type of content, may I take this opportunity to invite you to share and subscribe to my channel. Skorba was excavated in 1961 by the Cambridge-trained archaeologist David H. Trump, later curator of archaeology at Malta's National Museum. Trump's trenches cut through layers of soil and time, exposing a sequence of human activity stretching back nearly 7,000 years. He identified two major settlement phases. The earliest, the Grey Skorba phase around 4850 to 4500 BC, was made up of simple domestic floors, hearths, and ash deposits. Above it lay the Red Skorba phase between 4500 and 4100 BC, which showed a growing community with more decorated pottery, evidence of livestock and farming debris. Later, a transition phase linked Skorba to the Mnajdra and Ġgantija phases, where the first megaliths appeared. And finally, a shrine and small temple rose on the site, around 3600 to 3200 BC. This stratigraphy was crucial. It proved that Skorba was not a sudden creation, but the product of centuries of continuous occupation. In the 2010s, the Fraxus project, led by Cambridge University, the University of Malta, and international collaborators, returned to Skorba with cutting-edge science. They extracted samples from the same trenches Trump had excavated, charred barley seeds, hearth charcoal, and animal bones, all from sealed contexts beneath and around the temple foundations. Radiocarbon dating and Bayesian modeling confirmed Trump's chronology with striking precision. From these sealed contexts came charred barley, lentils, and hearth charcoal, all carefully cataloged and directly radiocarbon dated. In Trump's Trench A, the central sondage recorded as context 3 produced a lentil seed, UBA 33711, calibrated to 5006 to 4771 BC, securely placing farming here more than a millennium before the first temples. A barley grain from the same trench, UBA 33710, returned a date of 5280 to 4960 BC, belonging to the earliest Grey Skorba occupation. In a Ġgantija phase terrace deposit at the site, another barley grain, UBA 33709, gave a calibrated date of 5190 to 4790 BC. And in contexts beneath the temple wall itself, such as contexts 21 and 23, Fraxus recovered further seeds, confirming continued farming activity right up until temple construction around 3600 BC. This evidence is unimpeachable. The temple phase at Skorba, like Ġgantija and Tarxien, began not from nothing, but from the bedrock of centuries of farming life. Let's pause for a moment and look at some notable mentions found in the trenches beneath the temple. Beneath the megalithic shrine at Skorba, the earth preserved the everyday world of Malta's earliest farmers. When David Trump opened his trenches in the 1960s, and when the Fraxus team returned decades later, a wealth of material culture came to light, each piece cataloged and carefully recorded. Among the pottery, we see the progression of Malta's first ceramics. The Grey Skorba wares are plain and utilitarian, vessels burnished for daily use in cooking and storage. Above them appear the Red Skorba wares polished with red slip and more decorative, marking a community beginning to invest artistry into everyday life. Mixed in, Fragments of Zebbuch phase shards, with their incised decoration, connect Skorba's farmers to wider burial traditions such as the rock-cut tombs at Ta Trapna. The stone tools expand this picture. Flint blades and scrapers imported from Sicily reveal long-distance connections. Obsidian fragments sourced from Lipari and Pantelleria testify to networks stretching across the central Mediterranean. Polished stone axes and chisels show how people shaped their world, clearing land and working wood for houses and shrines. Bones tell us about diet and economy. Sheep, goat, pig, and cattle remains prove a mixed farming system, while dog bones remind us of domestication at the hearth. Burnt bone fragments from hearth deposits record meals long past, discarded after feasts or everyday cooking. The soil even holds traces of the fields themselves. Carbonized barley and emmer wheat grains survive in hearth ash, along with lentils and peas. Pollen analysis confirms that woodland was cleared to open fields, a proof that farming shaped the environment centuries before the temples rose. And then there are the ritual artifacts. Stylized figurines with broad hips or seated postures echo symbolic traditions found across Neolithic Malta. Decorated pottery fragments hint that ritual and everyday life were deeply intertwined. Life at Skorba was rooted in farming. Archaeologists uncovered grinding stones, sickle blades, and querns, the everyday tools of agriculture. This was no primitive society. It was a community that adapted, grew, and refined its culture across generations. A community capable, in time, of turning their agricultural surplus into monumental construction. But what about life beyond the hearth? Skorba itself was primarily a settlement and ritual hub. No great cemeteries were uncovered within its trenches. So where were the dead? The answer lies in the surrounding landscape. At Ta Trapna in Zebbuch, rock-cut tombs dated to the same period as Grey and Red Skorba. At Shemshia, cist graves and tombs reveal burial traditions of the Mjar phase. And across the channel in Gozo, the Great Shara Circle, or Brocktorf Circle, held the bones of hundreds of individuals, interred between 3600 and 2400 BC, exactly the period when Skorba's shrine was active. This shows a structured world: villages for the living, temples for the gods, cemeteries for the ancestors. Each community was part of a wider network, tied together by farming, ritual, and burial traditions. How did the people of Skorba and Malta move the great stones without metal tools or wheels? Experimental archaeology provides the answer. Stone hammers to quarry blocks, antler picks to lever them out, and sledges, ropes, and rollers to move them. Experiments show that 200 people can move a 40-ton block, well within the scale of Neolithic Malta's communities. And what of the temple's alignment? At Mnajdra, the rising sun illuminates the altar at the equinox. Skorba is less monumental, but even here the builders showed awareness of solar paths. This was not advanced mathematics. It was careful, patient skywatching, marking the sun's position on the horizon day after day, year after year. By the time Skorba's shrine was raised, astronomy was already part of Malta's cultural toolkit. Skorba dismantles the myth of suddenness. From Grey Skorba's first farmers around 4850 BC, to Red Skorba's flourishing settlement, to the transitional Mjar phase, and finally to the temple era of 3600 BC, the sequence is unbroken. Here we see farming, ritual, burial, and monumental architecture evolving hand in hand. The continuity of evidence, seeds, bones, pottery, and stone, is more remarkable than any myth. It shows how ordinary farming families, through centuries of resilience and adaptation, created the world's first freestanding stone temples. The stratigraphy and finds from beneath the temple levels demonstrate that Skorba was a settlement first, with farming firmly established long before the temple's construction around 3600 BC. The story of Skorba is the story of Malta itself, a journey from farmstead to temple, from hearth to monument. The soil here preserves not just stones, but the echoes of daily lives grinding grain, tending animals, burying the dead, and watching the skis. And from this quiet continuity, Malta's great temples rose not as mysteries, but as the crowning achievements of the world's earliest farming islanders. Skorba proves that the true wonder is not what is unexplained, but what was patiently built, generation after generation. Thank you once again for watching. May I remind you to share, like, and subscribe to support this channel for more interesting and continued evidence-based content.